Welcome to our first OLIS tutorial. I'm Claudia Carmichael, president of the Salem Branch, and we're glad to see you here. The OLIS program that we had last year, hosted by Laura, was so successful that when we talked about it at the Pam Shea program meeting in November, everybody said, I want to hear an OLIS tutorial. I want to attend one. So we thought, oh, the best way to do that would be to do a Zoom. So that's what we're doing. And we have Laura Buhl with us. She is our diversity chair. She's also State of Oregon land use and transportation planner. And in her spare time, she has agreed to show us the ins and outs of OLIS. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Laura Buhl.
Thanks, Claudia.
And cat.
Yeah, and my cat, who will only be mellow if she's sitting on my lap. So hopefully she behaves herself. So yeah, as Claudia mentioned, I do work for the state. I don't work for the legislature. So I use OLIS in a way that's probably similar to the way a lot of you will all use OLIS. Looking up information about bills, that sort of thing. But I'm not an expert in the legislative process. I'm a staff member of an agency, the Department of Land Conservation and Development. So let's start off with a poll, which I believe Nancy can launch. So the question is, have you used OLIS before? And there are 4 options. So if you could just answer. Great. Okay, it looks like we're done. So we've got 2 people who are an old hand, and this demo might be a lot of repeating for you. We got a few people who've been to the site, but they're not super familiar. A few people who've been to the site and really just can't get it. And then one person who's asking what's OLIS. So great. So this walkthrough is designed for people who don't know OLIS at all. But I think it'll be helpful for people who've been to the site but really aren't comfortable with it. If you're like super versed in the site, this might be a little boring for you, so just a warning. Also, in talking about the legislative process, I'm assuming that you all have sort of a Schoolhouse Rock level of knowledge of how a bill becomes a law. You know about the 3 branches of government, you know about a bicameral legislature, that sort of thing. So I'm just assuming that level of, you probably all had civics. I know they don't teach civics anymore, but hopefully you've all had civics. So we're going to spend this session on the internet, and I don't have slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my browser window. So you should all be seeing my favorite search engine, DuckDuckGo. So first of all, how do you even get to OLIS? There are a few different ways that you can get there. One is to start out with OregonLegislature.gov, which is this site. And I'm going to start here because even though this is more than OLIS, this has a lot of really useful information. And you can see one of the items it has is actually a link to OLIS. And also, if you don't know what OLIS is, OLIS stands for Oregon Legislative Information System. And sometimes you'll hear people say OLIS. I heard that the other day. I don't know why, but most people just say OLIS. And that's what it stands for. But I wanted to point this site out because if you're intimidated by the legislative process, there's a lot of information here that will help you and that will help explain things. So for example, there's this link that says, learn more about the 2024 legislative session. which is what the session that we're in now. There's information about bills and votes, dates, news. You can watch the meetings. A lot of the information that's here actually is also on OLIS. But I wanted to bring your attention to these tabs up here. If you just float your mouse over these, you get a ton of different options. And if you spend some time on this website, you'll discover, I mean, you can just get into a rabbit hole here. You'll discover all sorts of things. But one of the really useful ones is this tab called Get Involved. And it talks about how to submit testimony, how to testify, even how ideas become a law. So back to School House Rock. And this is really useful here, the legislative glossary. I'm just going to click on that because this has a definition of a lot of the lingo that you might hear. It has, really basic things like the administrative rule. What is that? Agenda. What is that? But it also has some of the fun slang terms like gotten stuff. If any of you have followed the legislature, you know that's where all the text is taken out of a bill and new text is put in. There's also the Christmas tree, the Christmas tree bill. So that's a bill that comes at the end of the session. And actually, I learned something because being a staff of a state agency, I thought Christmas tree bill was where we got all the presents, the extra money for the things we want to do. But it turns out it's called Christmas tree bill because all the provisions or ornaments are attached. So I learned something there. So just know that there is information here for you. You don't have to be intimidated by the legislative process. There's lots and lots of information for you. So let's go, if you go to your favorite search engine, mine is DuckDuckGo because I like privacy, and you just search for OLIS, that will very likely be the first hit. So if you don't link through the Oregon legislature.gov, you can also go through this through a web search, and then you can bookmark the page. So this is the page you get to. This is the main page. It'll show up with whatever the session is that's ongoing, or whatever the last session was. But right now we're in this session. I also want to bring up another way that you might get to OLIS, and that is, for example, if you're reading the news. So here's a news article from the Salem Reporter, which is, if you're not familiar with it, it's an online newspaper in Salem. And it's talking about a bill that tries to push back against book bans, so you can read this, and it's got a lot of links in it the way online news stories do. And one of them, you can see that this Senate Bill 1583 is hyperlinked. So if you were to click on this, where does it take you? It takes you to OLIS. So a lot of news stories will link straight to OLIS. And this one links to the page for the bill. But you do want to be careful because other news stories, and here's another one about a different bill. And this is just an example. It's not important which bill it is, but here's one where the bill is making some tweaks to state law so that local governments are not liable for people who have mishaps while they are recreating. And so here, when they cite the bill, they link to the bill, but you notice there's this -3, and it actually goes straight to a PDF of that specific amendment. This is Amendment 3. If that's the case, you want to be careful because the legislative process is dynamic. And what a bill contains can change literally from day to day. So if you were to go to, if instead of linking to the amendment, and actually this bill's a little complicated. I'm not sure what's going on with this bill because this bill actually has, and we'll go through all of these elements, but this bill actually has a ton of amendments. You can see it has, it doesn't have 13 because some of the numbers aren't here. I'm not sure why, but it does have a lot of amendments, and the one that news story linked to was this one, and they're not cumulative. Each one's doing a different thing. But I just wanted to point out that if a news story links straight to a PDF, beware, and also go to the OLIS page for that bill because there might be other changes. Like that might not be the way the bill ends up. So that's just a word to the wise there. So let's go back to OLIS. So now we're going to do a walkthrough of the site. And you can see that it takes you, when you go to the main page, it takes you to today. So if you're interested in knowing what happened today, or if you're interested in knowing what happened yesterday, for example, and even though yesterday was a holiday, the legislature was still working because they, everything's compressed. They've got to keep working. So you can, go to yesterday if you want, or today shows all the meetings that happened today, and you can actually click on, well, I'm not going to click on these, but if you wanted to, you could see what the, the agenda, and you could watch it. It shows what, whether there were referrals. So this is not bill specific. This is just everything, all the third readings are all here. All the second readings are all here. This is specific to what happened today. I don't ever use this page because I don't care what happened today. I care about a specific bill, and it's likely that you all will care about a specific bill. Let's say you do care about a specific bill, and now we're going to go through these icons here at the top. So under session, right now we're in the 2024 session. So if you are concerned about a bill that is in this session, and you know that it's in this session, you would not go to this, which can take you to previous sessions. You would go straight to bills and look for your bill. But let's say you wanted to know what happened, in a session. So for example, Bill 3409 was a bill from the last session, and that was a climate change bill. And so here, you can just put in the bill number and it knows whether it's a Senate or a House bill. So 3409. I do a search, no results. And the reason there are no results is because that bill was actually from the 2023 session. So if you search for a bill, you have to have the right session. So now I just selected session 2023. And now I'm going to search for 3409. And bingo, there it is. So if you're not finding the bill you want, it could be that you're looking for a bill from a previous session. And so in order to find the bill you want, you need to be in the right session. So that's the lesson for this icon. Now for bills, here you have several options. You can look for the bill number, which I just did. And so if you know the number, you can type it in, and you might find out the number from a news story or somebody said something. Usually people don't have those numbers float, in their heads, unless you're a real numbers person. But, it could be that you can't remember the number, you don't know the number, but you knew there was a bill that was about climate change. So, or maybe you just wanted to know all the bills that dealt with climate change, or all the bills that dealt with housing. So here you can go to bill text and run your search. And so, 140 bills deal with housing, but you're not sure which one it is. Well, if you wanted to just, unless you have more words to narrow down your search, you can do this. So you can float your cursor over the bill number, and it gives you like a 1-sentence description. Now, some very complicated bills are obviously not going to have all the elements in this 1-sentence description, but it does give you enough to kind of go on, and you can go to that page and see if it's what you want. Now, I do want to show the difference. So let's say you look for climate change. All right, so only 6 bills on this one. But we only looked in bill title, the catch line or the measure summary, and legislative concept is LC. So we didn't look for that number, but like if you happen to know what the LC number was, and a legislative concept is before it actually becomes a bill. If you knew what that was and you wanted to know which bill it turned into, then you could do a search of that. But that's very high level. I mean, you'd have to be, if you know about that, you probably don't need this OLIS training. Claudia, you have a question.
Would this be the 2023 session only that these bills would be in? You have to change it to 2024 or something?
Oh yeah, I am in the wrong session. So let me actually go to this session. Yeah. So now we're back in 2024. It doesn't, yeah, it does, so for climate change, actually only no bills. Oh, sorry, bill number. I need to go to bill text. Sorry. So climate change, okay, only 1 bill. So people are less interested apparently in climate change now than they were last year. That's not very encouraging. Anyway, again, this is just the bill title, the summary. Maybe there are some additional things. Maybe if you do the full text. So in the full text, it found no references to climate change, but maybe climate. Right. So then we got 18 bills under climate. So this is just to show you to not get freaked out if you don't find what you want. Be creative with your search terms. Know when to go broader or when to narrow down if you're looking for certain things. So that's bill text. And then under bill sponsor, let's say you wanted to know what your legislator was sponsoring. So one of my legislators is Kim Thatcher. Is it spelled with it? No, is it? No, I think it's a T-C-H-E-R. Yeah. So Kim Thatcher, and I can type her in, and I can see what she's the chief sponsor of, and I can see what she's just the regular sponsor of, like not the chief sponsor. So this is a good way to keep track, if you want to know what a particular legislator is working on, you can do this. You can also search by committee. So, here are all the committees, energy and environment. So what are all the chief sponsors? Oh, it's not. Not sure why that's not.
You still have Kim selected.
Yeah, well, let's see. Energy. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's not giving me anything under this. But I use this to find out. I use this to search names, not committees. If you can't remember the name, you can go down here and you're like, oh, right, Tom Anderson. I didn't know his name was spelled with an E-N instead of an O-N, you know, and then you can see all the stuff that he's busy. He's the chief sponsor of. So those are the bills. Okay, so let's move on to committees. So here you can search, but I prefer to browse because I don't necessarily know the names of all the committees. So, you know, if you're curious to know what a particular committee is up to, you know, here they are all listed. So, for example, let's see what the Senate Judiciary Committee is doing. So then you click on that, and here you get in the overview area, you can see all the members. You can see their staff, including telephone number. So I am not a lobbyist and I don't ever contact legislative staff, but if you wanted to, apparently that's fine. And when they meet and which room they meet in. So this is their meeting room in the Capitol building. You can also see under assigned measures here which bills they have. And then also if there's a meeting scheduled for the bill. So you can see they've got a bunch of bills, and if you flow over again, you can see what they're about, you know, just a little synopsis. These don't have any scheduled meetings. This one does. And if you were to click here on HB 4043, that would take you to the bills page. If you were to click here, that takes you to the meeting details. And so we're gonna look at that in a second. But for example, if you wanted to look at the agenda, there are no meeting materials yet. The meeting hasn't happened yet, so there's no recording log. But you know, this is the agenda. If you wanted to register to testify, you would do that here. So you have to put in all your information. And here there are more links about how to testify. So if you were going to testify, you definitely want to read those. So that's for that meeting. But if we go back to the main page on the Judiciary Committee for the Senate, here you can see, let's say you don't want to testify, you weren't at the here or the meeting, but you want to know what happened. Let's say you knew that a certain bill was up on the 6th of February, and you want to know what they said, what happened. So then you can actually go to that meeting. So this is a past meeting, a public hearing, and you can see, okay, they talked about Senate Bill 1560 and they talked about 1541. And then, you know, there's information about the meeting. You can read all the materials. So these are additional things that were submitted. You can look at the agendas and revisions apparently to the agenda. And this is the really interesting thing. You can also look at the recording log. So this is a PDF, but each of these timestamps is a different point in the video of the hearing. So, you know, let's say you don't want to sit and watch an hour worth of hearing, but you wanted to, you know, you didn't care about Senate Bill 1560, but you're really interested in Senate Bill 1541. And it even shows all the people who spoke. So, you know, if you wanted to jump straight to, all you cared about was what Catherine Harrington of the Washington County Board of Commissioners said in this public hearing, you click on that and you get this little pop-up window that says you clicked on an outside resource, and you say yes, and it opens up a video of that hearing, and you can see that it's set to that point in the video. So even though the whole hearing's over 40 minutes long, you can go straight to that point.
Hello, Chair Pruzansky, Vice Chair Thatcher, and members of the committee. Thank you for all.
And here is the woman from Washington County giving her testimony. So I think that's a really cool part of OLIS, that you can, you can really try, you can watch the public hearings, and you can watch what you want and not watch what you don't want. And then the last one here is the more button, and there's tons of stuff here. I'm not going to go through it all, but I just encourage you to spend some time on the site and explore it. So here you can look at all the committee agendas. You can see who's assigned to which committee. You can look up each committee and see the listings of who is on each committee. Some of this is, so you can see all the bills, and usually they're just hundreds upon hundreds of bills. You can see bills from previous sessions. There's just lots and lots of information here. So you can nerd out on this, and I encourage you to do that if you're interested. So let's go back to a bill and see and get into more depth on a specific bill. So previously we looked under bill text and we looked for climate. And one of the bills here is 1559, modifies state greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals. So when you first go to the bill page, you're going to see who are the chief sponsors. And if you're interested in that person, so Senator Dembrow, who's Senator Dembrow? Well, if you click on that, you go to Senator Dembrow's page, also in the Oregon State Legislature system. And you can find out, okay, he's from Portland, and this is him. So, but let's go back. So you can do that with all the sponsors and chief sponsors and regular sponsors. There's a title, there's a catchline summary, which you can expand, and it gives you a little more information. Sometimes it can be kind of long, actually, if it includes a lot of stuff. On some bills, there will be a fiscal impact. This one doesn't have one yet. It doesn't have a revenue impact. It does have a staff measure summary. So that's down here. So staff made these summaries, which you can read if you're interested. And then the measure history. And you can see there's not a lot of history here. So it's been introduced. There's been a first reading. It was referred to the Senate president, and all of these S's mean Senate. If it does progress, pretty soon some of these will, refer to the House. It was referred to committee. So the committee was Energy and Environment, and it had a public hearing. So if you want to know what happened at the public hearing, you can click on this and it'll take you to the hearing. And one of the things it does is you can see all the testimony. So if you testify, this is all the written testimony. There's a lot of written testimony. A lot of people apparently are interested in this, and it gives you, some really basic information. So Roberta Cade support, she from Salem. This is when it was posted, and you can even click on it and see her letter. So this is her letter. Sometimes they're just some random people So, you know, sometimes it's very short. Sometimes people just say, I don't like this bill, and that's all. You know, and then institutions. So here's the Oregon Environmental Council, and they probably have, yeah, so they have their letterhead, and it's very formal, and but you can see everything that people have posted. So back to the bill page. The next one is the text. So this is where you can find the actual introduced bill, and this is what it looks like. So it's got all the preamble, and it says the sections of Oregon Revised Statute that it's amending. So this section of Oregon Revised Statute is amended to read, and anytime it's in italics with brackets around it, that means it's being deleted. So they don't use underline and strikeout in Oregon. In other legal documents, you'll see underline and strikeout. They don't use that here. It's in italics and bracketed if it's deleted, and if it's bold, that means it's new language. So you'll learn how to read that. And if it's just regular, that means it's there already and it's staying the way it is. So they're changing all these references of global warming to climate change, which I find very interesting. Yeah, so that's the introduced. And I'm going to show another example that where this list of PDFs is a lot longer. So analysis, not a lot. So there's really not a lot here yet. There have been no amendments. This is a very new bill. Not a lot has happened on it. Testimony is, all the testimony will be compiled here. I showed you before, there's been one public hearing, and I showed you the testimony. So that's the testimony from this. If there's another public hearing and there's more testimony, it'll be added onto this list here. And then if a meeting is coming up, you can register to testify, but I just clicked on this and I got a message saying measure not scheduled for public testimony, because we saw that there were no scheduled meetings. If there happened to be a scheduled meeting, then you could register here. Let's say you didn't want to testify in person, but you wanted to submit testimony, written testimony, you would do that with this button. But since it's not scheduled for anything, you can't submit testimony. What you could do if you wanted to was write your legislator and tell that person, and I don't know anything about this bill, I haven't read it, this is just an example, but if you were interested in a particular bill that was not scheduled for testimony, you could write your legislator and express your opinion about the bill and whether you wanted it to move or not, because, you know, as we all know, most bills die in committee, and so if there are no scheduled meetings, and that continues to be the case, what you can do about that is to write your legislator and try to get it moving, especially if one of your legislators happens to be on that committee. But even if your legislator isn't on that committee, you know, there's a lot of horse trading that happens. There are all sorts of things that favors and whatnot. So that it's worthwhile to do that. So let's pick another bill that does have some more movement on it. And that's an example. I always have the wrong tab here. Okay, so here's Bill 1537A. This is a big bill, actually. This is you can see it has no sponsor because this is at the request of the governor. This is her big housing bill. And if you look down here, this does have a fiscal impact issued, and it does have a revenue impact. So if you go to analysis and you are interested, so revenue impact, that is what the state could potentially earn from the activities in this bill. Fiscal impact is what the state, the financial hit, so to speak, that the state could take. So if you click on this, you know, this is legislative analysis. This one's pretty short, 1 page, further analysis required. So it says it may have a revenue impact or impact on the tax policy of this state or local governments, but they haven't really determined, and according to this, they won't determine until it gets to Ways and Means. Although I think it might be at Ways and Means already. Fiscal impact is also short, but if you are interested in that sort of thing for a bill, you know, this is where you would find it. So the previous bill we looked at, it just said introduced, and there was 1 PDF. This one, actually, there are 3 PDFs. And that means that more work has been done on this bill. So the introduced bill is just the first bill as it's introduced. But then amendments are made throughout the legislative process. People testify, they say, I love this bill, but this part is terrible. I do know on this particular one, you know, there's been a lot of testimony regarding UGBs. So there are a lot of people who support the bill, but have some quibbles with certain elements of it. So that could lead to an amendment happening. So then you get to the next one, A, engrossed. And an engrossed bill is the printed bill with amendments. So if you were to compare the introduced bill of this and the A engrossed bill, they would be slightly different. And the reason it's called A engrossed is because this is the first version. If there are more amendments, then there might be a B engrossed, and then a C engrossed. And then, so you know, it's in chronological order. So if you want to know where the bill stands right now, you would look at this one. And this is what I was talking about earlier about that news story that linked directly to the PDF. To be careful about that, because it might not be linking to the latest PDF. It's better when the news story links to the site. Again, this is the bill. This one's quite a long one, you can tell, because of my, you know, this is a big bill. This is a big deal, actually. Let's go back to a bill from last session. And this is the bill that I pulled up earlier, 3409. Oh, bill number. I do this every single time. There we go. Okay, so 3409. So this is a bill from last session. It did pass. And I want to show you what this looks like. You know, a bill that's gone through the whole process. So when you're looking at the measure history, you can see here's a date. These are dates. This is which part of the, you know, House, and then it went over to the Senate. And this is what it happened each time. So it went to the speaker's desk. It was referred to rules. This is the meeting, a work session you can go to if you want. All these things happened. And it passed. And here's who voted. So you can see, so it says passed here. 34 voted yes, and 15 voted no. And all the no votes are listed, and everyone who is excused is listed. And if you click on this little plus sign, you get a nice little color-coded listing of who voted yes, aye, nay, or excused. And then, of course, it has to go to the Senate. And so it went to the Senate. It went out of committee. So by this time, we're in the B engrossed bill, and then the C engrossed bill got printed. And then a vote happened, and we get to see who voted. And then it had to go back to the House to be reconciled. So we have another vote. And then the Speaker of the House signed, the President of the Senate signed, and then the Governor signed. And then it went into what is called Oregon laws, and that is prior to it going into statute. And it was in Chapter 442. And it became effective on this date. It has been codified into Oregon revised statute. So just so you know, there's a lag time between when a bill is passed and it actually shows up in statute. And that can cause some confusion when you know a bill was passed last year and you're not seeing it in statute. You have to just know that it hasn't been updated yet. So I wanted to go back here to the text and show you, this is a bill that goes through that whole process is going to have multiple versions. So that it was introduced, the House introduced amendments, and then we had the A engrossed. So remember, engrossed is the bill with the amendments included. And then more amendments, and then the B engrossed, and then the Senate added amendments to that one, and we had the C engrossed. So that's with all the amendments. And then finally, we have this, the enrolled bill. And the enrolled bill is the final copy that has passed both houses and will be presented to the governor for signature. It doesn't mean that she will sign, but this is the final version that's gone through the whole process, and that's the enrolled. So if you want to know what the final bill was, and it hasn't made its way into statute yet, so you can't look it up there, this is the version you would want to look up. That's pretty much my rundown. Do those of you who answered C or D on the poll feel more comfortable with using OLIS, and that you could jump in and find what you wanted to find?
I'm going to say yes, Laura. Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
You have done a very nice job.
I feel the same. I think I
Okay.
could do this.
Me too. This is Alice in Ashland, and I think it's very intuitive and pretty easy to follow. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It's a really good system, I have to say. And the more you fiddle around in it, the more comfortable you will be. And if you're not understanding something, again, I really encourage you to go back to the main page of the Oregon legislature and go to this learn site. It tells about all these things, how to testify, how to do all sorts of the legislative process, types of measures. I mean, you will learn so much here. So just don't be intimidated. Know that the information is on the website. So it starts out with this how ideas become a law, but then it over here on the left side, it has all the links, and there's this little cartoon and stuff, but it has all the links to the various items that you can learn about. And as I mentioned before, the legislative glossary I find to be really, really helpful. But yeah, all of these links are helpful.
So I have a question. Alice Bartelt, who was a longtime member of AAUW and League of Women Voters, was honored. I can't remember when it was. Claudia Gray, you'll remember this, or Claire will know, was honored or somehow by the legislature. And how do we find out something about that, for instance?
I read about that. That was, I believe, a joint resolution.
Yes.
not.
It doesn't happen until Thursday.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Oh, it hasn't happened. But I know that the Senate president had something to do with that. Let's see. Oh, and I'm in the right session. Well, there are too many here but maybe if so I don't know if they have resolutions in this one, but let me just search for her name. Oh, look at that. Here we go. Right. So I just did a text search for Alice. So that's not a normal thing that you would find in a bill. And it popped up. SCR 203. And so here we go. At the request, chief sponsor, Senator Wagner, and Lou Frederick, I am assuming. And so in memoriam, it's been introduced, it's been referred to rules, and you can find the text of it here. So honors the life and memory of Alice Bartelt. Oh, interesting. Look, so a lot of these now, I don't know if you're familiar with this, have a readability score because they're trying to make the language more simple for anybody to understand. So that must be a new rule that they have to put this on every bill. Yeah, so it's a concurrent resolution, and here's all the information. Oh, Episcopal Diocese of Oregon, League of Women Voters, all of her AAUW, all of her affiliations. So that's, something you might want to print out if that means a lot to you. And we see that the scheduled events, it will be at the Senate Committee on Rules. There'll be a public hearing and work session on Thursday. Yeah. And here's the room. So if you wanted to register to testify, you'd click that. You have to sign all this up, sign all this. Or if you wanted to submit a letter, submit testimony, you'd do that through this link. So Claire, it looks like you have a question.
Yes, it's not a question, but it's just I'm realizing as I'm going through this, I've used this tool for a number of years, and I realized that I got through maybe the crust of the top of this, and I realize also that I tend to be a learner that has to do the work rather than reading it. So yeah. I'm going to have to sit down and just start playing with this doggone thing.
I'm glad you said that, because that is absolutely the best way to figure out how to use it. Just be an explorer and, click through everything, look through everything, play with it. When you are reading the paper or whatever and you see reference to a bill that looks interesting, go ahead and go to OLIS and see what's going on with it. Yeah. And so I'm glad you brought that one up, Nancy, because here it is.
Thank you for finding that. Some people might find that interesting.
Yeah, I'll put this one in the chat as well. Let's see.
And Laura, I think Marcia Kelly is going to be there to either make some comments at the time.
Okay. Oh, nice. So here's the link to that concurrent resolution on Alice Bartelt. Yeah, great. So any other questions before we wrap up? Well, silence means no, I guess.
I think this has been very helpful for people.
Well, thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you, Salem.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you everybody for being here.